Okay, sleeves. So again, for the base fitting, what we would normally do is we will machine the forearm, but base the hind arm and based in the sleeves, because once you've machined the forearm, if the sleeve is kind of like more or less cut correctly, you don't really often have to take this out. So therefore it's usually machined. And we don't base the forearm really. So that's what you need to know about sleeves when it comes to machining and basting. However, one thing we do need to do, so I can put down the sleeve away. When it comes to the sleeves, we have a curved shape on the forearm so that it resembles our arm and the bend of our elbow in a smooth way, in an elegant way. However, as I explained, any concave line, whether it's made from paper or fabric or wood, whatever, anything, that wants to fold back over itself or roll back over itself, while at the same time maintaining the curve of its cut edge, must be given extra length. So what we have to do is, in this case, stretch the forearm out to give that length. Why? Because simply, if we would fold this over, it turns into a straight line, as you can see. And if we try to bring this over like that to create a curve, you can immediately see and feel that there is a tightness here. And if you let go, it just folds, just falls back. That tension in the middle is not allowing the sleeve to fall elegantly with a concave edge. So it always wants to go back, and also it's a straight line. So what do? We stretch the sleeve from the top to the bottom. How do we do that? First of all, we do both of them at the same time, and this is how we're going to do it. You do not need a heavy iron for this. All you need to know is all you need to do is to exactly understand what you're doing. I would say cut a piece of calico or anything out in a concave line and stretch it so far until it rips. That way you know what your hands are capable of and how much force you're putting and how you're working with the iron. If you don't do that, you will always be afraid of stretching this really well because you don't want to rip your fabric. So actually make a sample and rip it to pieces until you know how much power you have in your hand. So put the iron on top. Just put some tension on this edge by holding both of them together, like between your index finger and thumb. Pull it and then try to position it in a convex line. So instead of making it concave, try to put it in a convex line. All I'm doing is I'm just bringing the iron forward and just bringing this down. That's all I'm doing. Okay? So now it's convex. It's not concave anymore. So, and you can also see as soon as I go back, there is a piece of length there. There's a little bit of extra length. So you're going to do this all the way across. So pull, position. Pull, position. Pull, position. Okay? Pull, position. And what I mean by position is position in a convex line. Pull, position. So as you get to the bottom, you don't need to stretch as much. It's really the center of this concave line. Now I've positioned this in a concave line every time I pulled and moved forward with the iron. You don't need to push the iron down too much. It's really the positioning. Now, once again, I start from the top. Pull, position more. Pull, position more. Pull, position more. Don't worry about the edges fraying. That is a very natural thing to happen. Until you have a slightly more convex line. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We can almost lay this concave line in a straight line, as you can see. Almost. But you can see the center wants to dip in. That's because the center is the point of, most resistance. So push or pull, pull, position. Pull, position, and then get this out of your way so that you have enough, flatness in front of the iron. Position, out of the way, pull, position, get this out of your way, pull, position, out of your way, and that's what you're going to repeat. Like so. Now, once you've done a little bit of stretching, what you're going to do is you're going to lay the top sleeve in front of you, flatten it like that, and then make sure the edges, of course, match. Like so. Flatten it. You can now see some waves. Fold this over itself and see if it comfortably can lie down while giving you a concave edge. Now, some fabrics will just lay dead flat. Some fabric may want to bounce back, but you can see now there's more of a tendency to stay at its place. So I think it is giving me a concave line, but I also feel that I can stretch this a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, pull, position. And you can also just go back and forwards a few times before you position, just like that. And then get this out of your way, pull, and go back and forwards. Pull this out of your way, pull, and go back and forwards. And hot. And then do the other side as well. And it should be more or less fine. You can also do something else. You've noticed I haven't used any steam or water because this is linen and I don't want to put water on it. But, with dry pressing, you can, go a long way. So there is very little tension, although it wants to spring back. I can just, just gently with your fingers, just hold this down, and it kind of like automatically goes into a concave line. If you are pressing something you don't want to put water on, like like cotton or linen, just spray your board cloth a little bit. Get rid of that initial mist on top of it. So now there is still moisture here. And then put this on top of it. And as you press, steam will go there in between the fibers, and you will be able to make the fabric slightly softer to make it more pliable. This is, of course, if you don't have a steam iron. Now, once more, with a little bit of steam. And this is linen. Linen is quite tough. So if you have a wool fabric, it's going to stretch so much easier. Be careful with flannels, because flannels can easily just rip if they are very lightweight, especially. But if you have like a very heavy wool, you can just spray some water on it and just stretch that thing, and it's going to be very nice to work with. Oh, okay. So, all right. Is this enough is the question. How do we know if this is enough? Well, like I said, linen is tough. So what I would want to see in a normal woolen fabric is to fold this back, and so that this can just lay on just stay there while giving us a concave line. Now, this doesn't seem that bad. It's just that this middle is being a bit tough. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a little bit more steam and stretch it out so that it knows who is who. Don't let the fabric intimidate you. Just, if you have to rip it, just rip the damn thing. Not literally, but, don't really be afraid of pulling and manipulating the fabric, because these are the moments where you can actually be a real tailor and shape fabric. You know, this is one of those moments, and of course with many others, but those moments are scarce, and so you have to make the most out of it. Of course, if you have some other fabric which is even more difficult, then what you do, if you have a fabric that's a lot more difficult, you don't cut a false forearm. And a false forearm, for those of you who don't know, is when the forearm seam is hidden on the inside of the sleeve. So the theory behind it is that you don't see that seam. It's hidden inside. So if the fabric is too difficult, then you cut a 50-50 sleeve, and that means that this seam is just going to be right on this edge, and it's going to be visible. But it requires a lot less stretching. So this seems to be fine for now. I will go ahead with this and make sure that they're machined, and then show you how to do the pressing. Also, another thing, sometimes if you have to, you can shape them separately, just so that you can put more force on one layer at a time if they are being very difficult and challenging. It would be funny if it would rip, Oh. Okay, so now how are we going to machine this? I'm going to show you how to machine this on the machine, but first always make sure you never make two left sides or two right sides. So open it up, right side up, then open this up. Now this is right side up. This right side is going to go to the right side of the other one, and this right side is going to go to the right side of the other one. All right. So again, we have this balance mark here, which we are going to use. And our balance mark here should pretty much match this here. Just put a pin there so that you don't, maybe you pick up the wrong one or whatever. And this is what you're going to do. Basically, you're going to place this so that the top sleeve is up, facing you. Then, as you run this through the machine, it's going to be a seam behind the edge. You're going to pull the top sleeve while just keeping the undersleeve flat. You're going to pull the top sleeve and make sure it's dead flat as you machine over it, and keep aligning and aligning and aligning and aligning. Now, when you get to the bottom, what's going to happen is you're going to have more or less a weird mismatch here. But what you want to do is not to do anything, really. Just match the edge and allow it to lay flat and keep on machining all the way to the bottom. You can ignore any shape that you get here at this moment, because once you stretch this fabric, it's going to react very differently than when you have two flat pieces of paper which you haven't stretched. So you have to make sure that the entire section of both sleeves are flat beyond this moment, so you don't have anything like this going on or anything like this. Just make sure that they are flat and that their edges are matching, and then just continue the run and let the top sleeve dictate. So that's what we're going to do now. Like I mentioned, we're going to have to put the sleeve so that the top sleeve is facing us, and make sure that your balance lines match. If you don't have balance lines, what you should match is this run, which I've indicated with mark stitches, and this run. So if you would continue this run, it's going to continue all the way there. You take a seam off on this line, it's going to give you this point. And on this one, if you continue this, it's going to run all the way there. You take a seam off on this line, it's going to give you this point. So this point has to then match this point, okay? So make sure your edges are matching and that the top sleeve is always held taut, and give it a slight pull. This time it's okay to pull things, but don't pull the undersleeve. Just make sure the top sleeve is pulled flat, and when you machine also, hold your hands next to the foot as close as you can to it, and keep everything, just be like a spider on this thing, because you don't want things to move in directions you don't want them to. So always move in short movements. And if you see the edge of your fabric fray, don't worry. Unless you have a very fraying fabric and it's like really fraying. But other than that, it's okay, that's normal. You can just trim those yarns away. Try to be as consistent as you can with your machining. Really keep it a seam away from the edge. And also, don't get into the habit of marking this with chalk, because you have enough indicators around your machine to know what a seam allowance is. You should practice that until you're comfortable with it. It's the same as the thimble. So I keep pulling the top sleeve and place it on top of the undersleeve without pulling the undersleeve. Just leave it alone. When you get close to the bottom, what you have to make sure is that, one, the undersleeve is just laying flat, like so, okay? Everything is flat around here, and that the top sleeve is going to match the edge of the undersleeve, but you're going to continue machining as everything in this area is flat along the line of the top sleeve, okay? Because before you stretch this, you can see that this hem line, well, you can't see it because I haven't mark stitched it, but I'll explain this to you later. So just follow the edge of the top sleeve. Now, I'm using a darker thread so that we can see everything. Just assess everything, see if your line is looking okay, and if it looks any decent, then continue. If you have any severe blips or it gets really wide and narrow and wide and narrow, you have to redo that. Now, let's do the other one as well. Again, top sleeve on top. Let the undersleeve be at the bottom and at ease. Make sure your balance lines are matching. If you don't have balance lines, match the runs at a level which is a seam away from the edge on the sewing line of the sleeve run. Also, make sure that the tension on your foot is set to normal tension, because if it's not holding it well, then things are going to move. So once more, when we get to the bottom, position everything, make sure it's all flat, match the edge, run along the edge 3/8 away and follow the top sleeve. And once more, assess your run, see if you have a decent run. If you have any severe blips, then you have to get rid of them. If you don't have severe blips, you have a little bit of a blip. If this is your practice jacket, don't be so fussy. You're going to throw it in the bin anyway. Just get on with it, and then once you really do things a couple of times, then start to get fussy. You have to understand that quality is in direct relation with quantity. in order to achieve quality, you have to produce a lot, make a lot of mistakes, make a lot of, different things until you understand what it is that you should be doing to get things right. So let's move on.